Hi, we are the Jesuit Volunteers. My name is Matthias, I'm 21 years old, and in the year of 2019-2020, I was doing my voluntary service in Cambodia. Right now, I'm studying philosophy and economics in Bayreuth, Germany.
Hi, my name is Benedicta. I'm 20 years old, and I also was in Cambodia 2019-2020. Right now, I'm studying environmental and bioresource management in Vienna.
Hi, I'm Paul, I'm 20 years old, and I study history at the University of Vienna. I have been a Jesuit volunteer in the years 2019 and 2020 in Mexico.
I'm Hannah, and I belong to the same volunteer batch as the others. I was doing my voluntary service in India, and I'm studying philosophy in Vienna right now. I'm really very happy to be here today. Since this topic is very important for us, it means a lot to us to be heard today. So thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. To be frank with you, I'm quite frightened. Not because I'm speaking today in front of a big and impressive audience. Luckily, we recorded our speech beforehand, but because I feel like I witnessed the self-destruction of humanity. Our ethics, belief systems, and the according institutions, especially the church, are really seeming to fail when it comes to recognize and act against the current problems, which are so big as they threaten human existence on Earth. Being in the situation of young adults, we are quite disillusioned when it comes to what we as individuals can do. However, I think I can speak for the four of us, that all our hopes are focused on building a community of equal, hopeful, and idealistic human beings that maybe can change the course humanity is heading at. We are here today in the hope that we can offer not only a fresh perspective, but also starting points for you in the most modest way possible to be the spiritual leaders the world and also we now need to have. But first things first, human-made climate change is our present, past, and probably our future. It will, is, and has already destroyed God's creation, nature, animal, and also human life. It is only a matter of time until we reach the so-called tipping points, and our climate will be irrevocably going out of hand, making parts of our planet uninhabitable and causing humanitarian disasters worldwide. I want to tell you a story I stole from a cognitive scientist, but you probably also know it. If a frog is thrown into boiling water, the frog will immediately jump out. And it can jump out of the water because it is a frog. However, if the frog is placed in tepid water and the water is then brought to boil slowly, the frog will enjoy it and remain in the water. It won't feel the increase in temperature and therefore won't perceive any danger and eventually will be cooked to death. This frog is us. We are still alive, so the water isn't properly boiling yet, but let's say it is about 80 centigrade. Never in the last 2000 years has the climate been warmed at such a high rate by human influence as in the last 6 decades. We are talking about a temperature increase of the atmosphere, the ocean, and the land, leading to a global retreat of glaciers and Arctic, Antarctic, and even Greenland sea ice, also causing an acidification of the surface open ocean, rise of the sea levels, disturbance of the freshwater cycle, and extreme weather situations around the globe. The list is long and would continue if I wanted to give you an all-encompassing scientific summary, as for example, the newly published IPCC report does. The extent of the destruction is already immeasurable. Amazon forest burning, sea levels slowly devouring islands and coastal areas, desertification and hot weather extremes evaporating necessary drink water, and incomprehensible catastrophes burying, drowning, and suffocating people. And humanity is still sticking to these sick ideas of economic growth and mutual competition for supremacy. The moment our world's political leaders were finally paying attention to sustainability and care for our common home, Russia invaded Ukraine, and we are back again at all kinds of warfare, pumping money into combat aircraft. Okay, give me a second. I've made a mistake. It is not us who will be the first to lose everything. Human-made climate change will deepen the inequality around the globe. The privileged are mostly those causing climate change by building economic and political structures that exploit humans and planet equally, and therefore everyone and everything on the planet. Those probably will be the last to notice it, which is even more dangerous. But it is us who have the freedom now and therefore the responsibility to act. Showing the way to God means for me showing us the way to justice on earth, to equality, and to trust in each other and the higher good. Marching with the marginalized means for me trying to save at least 1 billion people, mostly in the Southern Hemisphere, who are directly threatened by the climate crisis. Accompanying young people in the creation of a hopeful future means for me to gather all your strength and efforts so that I and my generation, and I'm especially talking about young people on the other side of the world, have a future at all.
So I was told that my job here today is to give the perspective of young people on the climate crisis and what our expectations are, but also what our fears about our future are. In other words, you asked me to come here to repeat again what millions of young people have already said before me. For decades now, activists have warned repeatedly about the existential crisis we are facing. Millions of young people have communicated the concerns about their future looking like literal hell, but somehow some of these points still seem to be kind of unclear to some people. If any one of you still thinks that there is any issue that is more important and should be higher on the agenda than this climate crisis, then I do not know on which planet you have spent the last years. A few years ago, I had hoped that we would somehow still be able to drastically reduce carbon emissions and it would all turn out fine. In this vision of our future, life could continue like it was before. We would just have some switches in our energy production and infrastructure. This optimistic view of the future is gone for quite some time. By now, I think of fighting the climate crisis more of what we can do to prevent the worst from happening. I have accepted that because we have failed to take the right actions on time, we will have some huge catastrophes in the upcoming years. You know the news and forecasts about our future, how we will eradicate large parts of our ecosystems, make huge parts of the world uninhabitable, and how we will have to lead wars for basic goods like water. Hannah has already given you an insight on how we failed to take action in the past. I will not repeat all those dystopian scenarios of our future because at this point, it is not my job to remind again of how terrible it will be. But since you've all come here together to decide on the Jesuits' role and action in this global crisis, I would like to share some perspective with you on how I envision a positive change. Most of the measures that we discuss nowadays turn around the role of the individual and the changes it has to make to prevent the global temperatures from rising. It is not the question if we use the recycling cup for our morning coffee or if we save on plastic bags during our shopping trips. Don't get me wrong, I totally encourage everyone to do this, but I also know that this will not save us. Carbon emissions are mostly caused by the way of production our system is set on. It is not a question of our individual choices we make every day, but of a system change that has to happen. Don't worry, I do not want you to start a revolution, but I want you to think about how we can change our infrastructure and ways of production step by step. How can we improve the ways of production in our agricultural industry to stop cutting down millions of square miles of forest just to feed ourselves? How can we make sure that we keep providing people, especially in developing countries, with the products they need to lead a decent life? How can we limit the damage of companies that do not produce anything valuable, but make huge profits out of their very destructive business models? This fight will be a hard one, because we will have to fight and change a system that seems to be our whole reality. I believe that the Jesuits have the potential and resources to have a positive impact throughout the whole world. I have had the chance to get to know some projects that already give a great example on how we can take action to systematically build up a sustainable existence for humankind. But there has to be done more. Unfortunately, I have also experienced Jesuits who do not seem to really care about any of this. So I think that with this Congress, you have a great opportunity to set a clear agenda that will show the Jesuits' role in the social and ecological transformation process. Please use it.
Now that we spelled out the situation, we want to share with you how the problems we are facing make us feel. Like I mentioned before, I study environmental and bioresource management. Due to my studies, I'm constantly confronted with the climate crisis and the ongoing injustice so many people worldwide face. Spending so much time learning about the magnitude of our problems and how little is done to solve them is giving me anxiety. Only recently, I truly realized how drastically my life might change. Since I can remember, I always wanted to be a mom. But right now, I can't bear the thought of bringing a child into this world, not when the stakes are this high. And I don't exaggerate when I tell you that this breaks my heart.
Well, I'm not only scared, but have started to feel more and more anger. I do not believe that we will be able to pull out of this mess without any consequences. So seeing that we as humanity are still failing to take proper action makes me feel frustrated and very furious. And this frustration can very quickly turn into a feeling of being completely powerless and stuck in the system of self-destruction.
I, for my part, do not only live in Austria, but I also feel like an ostrich. I notice that I put my head in the sand far too often to not turn crazy. All those scientific facts, I think even as a religious person, one is obliged to give them great importance, are really diminishing my optimism. On the other hand, Austria is full of ostriches. Only living here means ignoring part of our world's realities. I experienced them during my time as a Jesuit volunteer in India, but I'm stuck here right now in a life that is built on the suffering of other people and the environment. And even with my eyes covered by sand, this knowledge just makes me devastated.
I am scared. I'm scared because there's no way back. I'm scared of the irreversibility of the climate crisis. I myself as a person I'm a person who usually does things at the last minute, right before it is too late. But this won't work for us this time, because at that moment where our wealthy governments are not able to fight back the consequences of the climate crisis, and we think, okay, now we really have to act or it is too late, it will already be 20 to 30 years too late. At that time, I will be your age, and my generation will be in charge. But I'm afraid that there will be nothing to change and nothing to do, because humanity already went beyond this tipping point, after which there's no way back.
I want to take this opportunity to thank all those of you who are already committed to fight the climate crisis and the injustice induced by it. We see you, and we want you to know that we are rooting for you. You may ask yourself why the church should take responsibility and act. Let me tell you, there are numerous reasons why. First and foremost, this world, our home, all of creation, is to be trusted with us. You are Jesuits, so I think and hope that you are familiar with Pope Francis' Laudato Si. In it, he says, and I quote, "If the simple fact of being human moves people to care for the environment of which they are a part, Christians in their turn realize that their responsibility within creation and their duty towards nature and the Creator are an essential part of their faith." When Laudato Si was published in 2015, it showed that the Vatican cared. It was a reminder to take responsibility and a plea for all of us Christians to act. That's right. We as Christians have the duty to protect our common home. You even have it written in your apostolic preferences. caring for our common home, collaborate with gospel depth for the protection and renewal of God's creation. You are Jesuits, and therefore are blessed to work with many people during your lifetime. You have the possibility to be multipliers of change. Everything you do and stand for has the potential to inspire others, so don't underestimate the power each one of you has. And for sure, don't underestimate the power the Church as a whole has to do better. We are blessed with this beautiful home, where everything is intertwined and depends on each other. Every single creature has its role to play. Every animal, plant, and fungi is a sign of God's love and worthy of our admiration. I don't know about you, but it is in nature I feel closest to God. To live in harmony with creation is a goal we should all strive for, and also a form of praise. There are many ways you can help, but I urge you, don't let prayer be the end of it. Take action. Prayer is important, but I'm confident. If Jesus was alive in this day and age, he would pray, yes, but he would also be in the refugee camps and alongside the people who suffered from natural catastrophes. He would solace the people suffering due to the climate crisis. He would mourn all of creation that hurts and demand change from our leaders, in fact, loudly. The responsibility to take care of our common home shouldn't be yet another point on our never-ending to-do list. It should infuse everything we do and stand for. After all, looking away never was and never will be a Christian posture.
Pope Francis wrote in Laudato Si that the Church cannot solve the scientific question of the climate crisis, but must stand for transparent debate in society. I believe that is not enough. Our Church must cry out in anger and despair. I see the Church as one of the most important moral actors in global society, with over 2 billion Christian believers all over the world. The beliefs that are written down in Laudato Si as some of the most fundamental values of Jesus can have a huge impact on them and their actions. We ask all the representatives of the Church to fight for our common home and encourage their communities to reflect their own actions and the actions of their governments. As Paul already argued, it is not enough to promote the climate protection in our individual actions. We must change the structures and goals of our industry, production, and society. On this matter, we must not underestimate the influence of the Church in political decision-making, especially in Western countries that are founded upon Christian values and culture. They are the ones that have to change radically, and the Church can give them the right reasons to do so. When I told my friends and fellow students about our video and this great Congress, I often had the feeling that they stopped listening to what I was saying after I mentioned that it was hosted by the Catholic Church. I heard sentences like, "I guess there are only white men there, right? How should they understand us? The Church has so many outdated opinions. I don't care what they think." Or, "Those guys do not represent anything I stand for. Do they think they can get the youth back into their churches just with a little bit of greenwashing?" And I agree with many of those voices. This impact on the 2 billion people I mentioned before can only be realized if those people also listen to what you have to say. In other words, the Church must be authentic and transparent in the way it interacts with its members. Maybe this is just a German perspective, where I have the feeling that we are in the middle of a transformative process of Church in general. But regardless, I am convinced that Church must listen to the people and find the right answers to their needs and questions. One of those answers is Laudato Si, but it is not the only one that our time needs. Another aspect of authenticity are the actions of Christian institutions which are present in our everyday life. All the buildings that the Church owns must be role models for others. They should be modernized, equipped with solar panels, modern isolation, and so on. Especially the Jesuits are traveling a lot, and that is not a bad thing. But we have to rethink mobility in terms of compensation, alternative ways of travel, or online attendance. There are also many educational institutions that the church is holding where you can already influence the next generation in their understanding of our common home. Concepts like interdependence of living things and the consequences of the climate crisis must be added to the educational focus of schools and universities. Finally, environmental topics should be more prominent in the Holy Mass and other spiritual services. The words of Laudato Si can give hope and motivation to protect our common home, but it is not enough to read them out silently. We must shout them in all the languages of the world and underline them with our actions. To come to a conclusion, we are frustrated and heartbroken to see this world being destroyed. And we are even more terrified when we look at our future or even the future of our children. Some of us are not even sure if we should have children at all. The climate crisis has to be stopped now to secure the things that we have left to live for. I believe that the thoughts of interdependence and care of our common home, which Pope Francis promotes in Laudato Si, give us the best motivation to act. The Church has the resources and moral reasons to have a huge impact on the protection of our planet in two ways. First, the direct actions in climate protection, education, and spiritual guidance. Only if you act according to your words, the people will listen to what you have to say. And by that, I not only mean the words on climate protection, but also on the equality of all human beings, regardless of their sexuality or gender. Even more important is the fact on the moral attitudes, is the impact on the moral attitudes of society and governments. When you return to your work, please give it your all to promote the protection of our world. Our generation needs your help, and therefore we urge you to scream with us so that everybody knows we must act now. Thank you.